I was of the opinion that BYU being ranked 7th in the initial college football playoff rankings was a great spot for the Cougars to be in, but one national expert believes that BYU should be upset with where they're ranked.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider right here on your original daily podcast focused on all things BYU. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about why one national expert at minimum believes that BYU deserves better treatment than they already got from the college football playoff rankings. We'll get into that. Then we're going to catch up with BYU defensive tackles coach Sione Puha. Had a great conversation with him, what he expects from BYU's interior defensive line play this week against Texas Tech, and quite honestly, just how he evaluates things overall. Then we'll finish up today's show by reacting to BYU's 50th Hall of Fame class. It was announced yesterday. We'll talk about who's being inducted, and we'll talk about why it's a really cool thing to see some of these names that have popped up on said list. It's all brought to you today by our friends over at FanDuel. New customers right now at FanDuel can bet just $5, and if it hits, you win $300 in bonus bets, courtesy of FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com to get started today. All right, so let's dive right in on today's show. And I did a live reaction show Tuesday night after the college football playoff rankings were unveiled, and I thought BYU was in actually a pretty good spot, ranked number 7 in the country. Some of you said, hey, they should have been higher because they're the lowest ranked undefeated team on the list. Okay, I understood all that, but here's the deal. BYU's history with the college football playoff rankings is one fraught with frustration because they have been routinely downgraded, but one national expert from a network that, quite frankly, I don't think has any real affinity for the Big 12, or if not just trying to downgrade it. ESPN had David Hale write an interesting article. It's called the Week 11 Anger Index, and it says this: outrage for BYU, Miami over CFP ranking. So as he breaks it down, he says there's still a few schools who have a pretty good case for outrage already. Number 1 on said list, BYU, 8-0, number 7 in the rankings. And as David talks about, he talks about how in last year's final college football playoff rankings, BYU was ranked behind a trio of SEC teams who were left out, but also had one more loss, if not bad losses. And BYU went 10-2 and had 2 close losses to solid teams. So they said certainly the committee would feel some compassion for the Cougars this year and consider the Cougars with a little more optimism, right? No. Let's take a look at some blind resumes. And say Team A has a number 3 strength of record, number 33 strength of schedule, 4-0 versus SP plus top 40 opponents, and the best win versus number 11 in the committee's poll. Team B, number 4 strength of record, number 45 strength of schedule, 3-0 versus SP plus top 40 opponents, and their best win is number 13 in the committee's poll. Sure, Team A has a slight edge, but the resumes look pretty similar. Well, Team A is the committee's number 1 team, Ohio State. Surely, if another team's resume looks more or less the same or right there in the same realm, that team would be staring down on a bye in the first round of the playoff, right? Nope. Team B is BYU, and the Cougars sit behind 3 SEC teams, all with a loss, all 3 of which are ranked lower in ESPN's strength of record metric. Given that BYU has a massive showdown with Texas Tech upcoming, perhaps the committee just punted any tough decisions on the Cougars for this week. After all, given how much love the committee has shown to the Big Ten in these rankings, punting would be a fitting play, unquote. So apparently we're supposed to be upset with where BYU's ranked. I hadn't even considered this, so I'll be very blunt. That when this was sent to me, I had no idea, and maybe it's a failure on my part, to know that BYU strength of record was top 5 in the entire country. But thinking back on it, BYU is 8-0, and they've done a lot of good things. I also, as I said, I thought that 7th was a good spot to be in because I thought the committee, speaking of the College Football Playoff Committee, did a pretty good job, I think, rewarding the Big 12's power brands right now, those being BYU, Texas Tech, and Utah, and they're all ahead of the ACC. It kind of felt like, and I said it Tuesday night for those of you who are everydayers, that it feels like this year's ACC is last year's Big 12, and this year's Big 12 is last year's ACC. And it's a great fitting flip on terms of the procedure, the projection, the overall prowess of these 2 leagues. When Virginia, nothing against the Who's, is your best bet for the ACC right now, yeah, I totally understand why BYU, Texas Tech, and Utah are ahead of them, because the Hoos have nowhere near what the other three of these Big 12 power brands have in terms of a resume. But to see BYU's resume match up pretty tightly with the number one team in the country who's been routinely drumming opponents, speaking of Ohio State, when it's one off in terms of its number 3 versus number 4 strength of record, you're a little bit behind in strength of schedule, but that's probably due in part because the Big 10 has some more power brands and better teams, at least on paper. And then you're 3-0 versus 4-0 in the SP Plus top 40. Yeah, that resume says BYU should be top 5 in the country. But I also acknowledge that I think David Hale has a point here, that maybe the committee is waiting to see what BYU and Texas Tech ultimately do. The good news is history suggests, and at least we'll see if precedent holds here, that these two matching up as top 10 opponents, whoever wins said matchup on Saturday, very likely does ascend into the top 5 in the national rankings, whether that's Tech or BYU. And the loser, they're not going to get dropped like a stone. They're actually probably going to drop maybe to 10 or 11 at the very worst, and still very much be in the mix for a rematch, A, in the Big 12 title game, and B, A is the Big 12 title game rematch, and B, being very much still a viable at-large candidate for the college football playoff. I can acknowledge, if you're looking simply at it from the prism of the Big 12 and the hopes of getting multiple teams in the Big 12 conference, I can tell you that there are going to be certain people out there in the Big 12, I'm talking about the greater conference, thinking of the conference as good, who want Texas Tech to win this game this week, then to have BYU and Tech rematch in Arlington in a month's time, with both teams 11-1, very likely still very much in the top 10, Tech maybe at worst top 5, and have BYU win that game, have both of them go into the playoff and very much look like viable contenders to win in advance in said tournament. I think that is what the greater Big 12 thinks, but I can tell you BYU's mindset, it's not on that. They want to win. They want to keep their streak alive, and they want to just handle their business. They know, speaking of players, coaches, administrators, anybody involved with BYU football a season ago, know how slim that margin was. It's absolutely insanity to me that BYU, had they beaten Kansas a season, had they beaten Kansas a season ago and lost to Houston, the way the strength of record metric and the tiebreaker there would have played out, BYU would have been in the Big 12 title game over Iowa State. Just so happened that losing to Kansas actually did them in versus beating. It's nuts to me. And I think that BYU learned a hard lesson. Do not leave it in anybody else's hands. Go out there, handle your business, and make sure that don't give anybody any chance to take it away from you. Earn it. Go out there, and as Kalani Sitake and others are very fond of saying, control the controllable. And I can fully respect that BYU's mindset is right there on that, as it should be, and very much looking forward to this showdown in Lubbock on Saturday morning. All right, coming up next, a guy whose unit is going to be very critical to slowing down what looks like a very, very strong Texas Tech rushing attack. That would be BYU defensive tackles coach Sione Pua. Had a great conversation with him after practice yesterday. You're going to hear that conversation coming up next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Supply House. Now, if you work in the trades industry, you know how crazy it can be in terms of getting the things you need. With the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow with over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. The real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting on your projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. And the best part is, you need parts fast for a project, they have next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer, because I think any of you who work in the trades know how quick of a turnaround and how much of a game changer that truly can be. And they Trademaster perks, priority shipping, dedicated support, among others, make the whole process smoother. So join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. All you got to do is visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Use the promo code SHCollege5. Real people, and of course, real service. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you who have subscribed, rated, and reviewed the show over the many, many years and months we've done the show. But if you've not done so, you're checking out for the very first time. We're available wherever you get your podcasts, also available on YouTube. Please go like and rate and review the show wherever you are consuming it. If you're on YouTube right now, right there, little thumbs up icon. Click it. That's all you got to do. Help the algorithm. Give us a little extra love. So as always, thank you for all of your support of this podcast. All right, I had a great chance yesterday to catch up with BYU defensive tackles coach Sione Puha. Had a lot of good questions I wanted to ask him about the interior defensive line play, and in particular, guys like Keanu Tanuvasa, John Talmoya-Peau. What is Justin Kirkland's role? Because he didn't play against Iowa State. So we asked him all those questions and more. Without further ado, here's that conversation. You're going to hear it here, right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.
Got some really tough opponents upcoming, obviously led by Texas Tech, some of these physical run games that come in the Big 12. What's been the biggest difference you feel like in terms of your guys' ability to slow down opposing rushing attacks?
I think just first, just being sound in our, being assignment sound, and really just trying to win our 111, like Kalani had mentioned before, right? And so just really just trying to be, and in those situations, right, it's all about centimeters, right? You don't have foot or have a foot, so we're really trying to be really exact in details in our execution of, what our assignments are for the specific defense. So for us, it's just being super sound, being super detailed, and not really getting bored with it over the weeks, right? And so for us, it's really just perfecting that craft in terms of just the details of it.
There's a former offensive lineman who played here, and he always liked to talk about, he's a guard. He's like, we're playing in a phone book, essentially. Yeah. And it's like it's two 300-pound guys, and you have about the space of a 6x6 box. Yeah. How difficult can that be? Because you mentioned the centimeters thing, because it's really tight quarters.
I think it's difficult for other people because they don't play in a phone booth, right? And I don't even know if this generation knows what a phone booth looks like, right?
Fair.
But, for other people, it might be hard for them because there's not really a lot of space. For us, it's kind of like, it's kind of our expertise. Yeah. Like we know how to kind of work in that type of, 3x3 box type of deal. So for us, it's really just part of our craft. It's what we do. It's how we work. And so for us, it's something that we try to pride ourselves in and being very good in such a short space and in such a short time. Yeah. That makes sense. And so for others, it might seem like something difficult, but for us, it's all we know.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about Keanu. How has he come along so far? What have you been most impressed with him?
Yeah, just impressed about everything, just about who he is and how he's developed as a person. Yeah. And that affects him, our room, affects the defense, affects the whole team. So just to see him just blossom in who he is has been really impressive.
What's made him stand out in terms of his on-field play?
Just his ability to kind of merge into the defense, right, and really understand it, and then just kind of be himself within the defense. And so his ability to be able to adapt really fast. But I think that's more in part of just his humility, which is one of our core values, right? For his ability just to come in and say, hey, I know a lot, but I don't know enough. I know, Coach, you have some for me. So his ability just to be able to take information, really just search out for it, right? And so he'll text me, at night and ask me a question about a play that he's seen at practice, and so his willingness to learn and be a student probably is his biggest asset.
What's Justin Kirkland been like so far? I know he was slow getting into playing time, but what's he been like so far for you guys?
He's been good, man. Solid guy in the middle, right? Been able to develop. He had the injury a little bit earlier, so we use him when we need to use him, and so his ability just to come in and be that big body and big presence in the middle has been impressive.
His experience in the Big 12, does that help?
Yeah, I think any experience, if it's good experience, and if any experience in the Big 12 is good, especially playing in P4 programs is good if you use it for your benefit, if it helps you become a better player. So for him, his ability to be able to contribute the way he has, he's been able to use that. Some people can say, I played in Big, I've been here, I've done that, got the T-shirt. But it's not the case with him. He's still coming in with the same mentality as Keanu. He came from a Big 12 program, Big 12, Pac-12 program. But for them to come in just with their humility and ability just to want to continue to learn and grow, that's what helps them become, more of who they are and need to be in this defense.
John Talmoya-Peau has kind of been the unsung hero, it feels like. What's made him stand out in your mind?
Yeah, again, same thing with him. Yeah. Those three have just been students, and students above what you would think a normal senior would be. Okay. They're acting like freshmen when they seek out, and not only when they seek out coaching, but when they receive coaching, right? I mean, you see them in their books, writing things down, taking a note, and really when they come out here and they cross the lines, because you can't cross the line as a coach, but when they go in and you see the product of how they behave and how they execute, and you see that the things you're trying to teach them as a coach is being implemented, those three do that very, very well. And it's a great lesson for all the younger guys to know that, hey, I've got guys that's been from big programs, that made big time plays, guys that are seniors now, and that's how you learn. And that's how you not stop learning when it comes to football.
Nisi Purcell wasn't on the depth chart this week. What is his role? Like, what is it going to look like for him?
Yeah, so for Anisi, going into this week, he had a hand issue, and so he's just taking care of that a little bit. We're just modifying some things for him, but he continues to develop in his own way.
Looking at Texas Tech, huge game. First time BYU's played a top 10 opponent as a top 10 ranked team.
Yep.
Do you guys feel kind of the enormity of this game in a way?
Well, we know that's kind of the surrounding thing. It's kind of like the Utah game, right? But just a little bit more different optics that's around it. And so, as a player, as a former player and as a coach, what we try to do is really just say, okay, let's try to keep the main things, which is what we've been doing. Just becoming the best version of ourselves, trying to execute and be who we are and become a better us, if that makes sense. And so for us, it's just doubling down on those things, right? The optics and the decorations around it are going to be there, and it's super exciting, right? It's super exciting. It's good to acknowledge it, but not to base your play off of it, if that makes sense, and not have that be a driver for you. What we've done has got us to where we are, and so we're going to continue to just keep being a better BYU.
What do you make of Texas Tech as a whole?
Yeah, great team, man. Yeah. Great team. Offense and defense, their ability to execute, just the culture that they have, right? Really good team. And so you can see them kind of like us, right? Yeah. People who really relish in their culture and who they are. And so it's just really been awesome to be able to see them on their journey, see them on them playing their games and executing and really taking over games. Really, really impressive. But that's just because they've bought into who they are. They know who they are, and it's great to see them play.
Second half last week, their running game really came to life. How difficult can that be to slow down a big physical offensive line and two running backs who can really bring it?
Yeah, again, it's just all about execution, right? Yeah. If you, especially with the guys inside, if you miss by a centimeter, they'll exploit it. That's why they're really good, is they know that when you're off a centimeter, that's all they really need. Is to be able to be. So for us, is being able to play sound technical football and assignment sound football.
You obviously played at a high level, both in college and the NFL. How much do you feel like your experience can translate to helping guys understand, like, hey, in game, this is what you need to focus on?
My experience as a player is only as useful as I can connect it with my players, right? It can't be back in the day type coaching type of deal. But if I can transfer the things that I've known in the right dose amount, right? Playing a lot of football, like in the right dose amount, at the right time, at the right moment when the player is able to take that in and really to use it, that's when that's useful. But if it's a time for story time of coaches' good old playing days, right, and it doesn't do them any good, right, you bore them, but it's really taking that and what really transfers into the players. That's what counts.
Balancing the Uncle Rico with the here and now, right?
Yeah. I try to put that all behind. That's why, like in my office, our players are like, Coach, you don't have no pictures of you playing. I'm like, because it's not about me, it's about you, right? I'm a teacher, right? I'm a teacher, and so as a teacher, I got to be able to use that and be able to help them be better and elevate their play.
I also want to ask about your son. Obviously, he's playing defensive end, but he's still there on the defensive line. What have you made of Billy and what he's done so far?
Man, Coach Anderson and Coach Papinga have done a great job, and be able to teach him the game of football. Like I've said many times, I try to do my best to play the dad position, right? He's going to have 25 coaches. He got one dad, so I might as well just play my role and make sure I'm there for pizza money and for gas money. But every once in a while, he asks me different questions, and I sing the same hymn as Coach K-Pop and Coach Anderson, and so he's just been developing and doing his deal, and I'm super proud of him.
There you have it. A big thank you to Sione Pua for taking the time to join us here on the show. And you heard him talk about Nisi Purcell dealing with a hand injury. And if you saw the initial player availability report that came out last night, Nisi Purcell is out for this week's game. So obviously losing a rotation piece on the interior defensive line, that hurts. But it was also interesting to hear him talk about using Justin Kirkland strategically. He had a very slow start in terms of his time arriving in Provo and dealing with a lingering knee issue that bled into the season. So I can think that this week you're probably going to see Justin Kirkland out there on the field trying to hold down the fort to help BYU's interior hold up against a very, very strong rushing attack, just an overall strong offense for Texas Tech. But good thoughts from Sione Puha, and cool to hear him talk about his son and how he has to kind of put that dad hat on versus the coaching hat. But even when his son wants the advice, his players want the advice as well. Interesting to hear him how he both doles out the wisdom from his many, many years playing at an extremely high level, because any of you who know anything about Sione Puha's play, both at Utah and in the NFL, mainly for the New York Jets, know that he was an absolute animal. And I use that term lovingly because he was phenomenal playing for the Utes and in the NFL. And he has a lot of wisdom to dispense, but I appreciate the way that he goes about dispensing it, because as he mentioned, he doesn't want to be a total Uncle Rico and be like, well, back in my day. No, he says it's about the guys here and now, and he wants to be a teacher. And I really appreciate that mindset and his philosophy on that also. As always, once again, big thank you to Sione Puha, as well as BYU Athletic Communications for arranging said interview. Always good to catch up with players and coaches and let you guys hear those chats right here on Locked On Cougars. All right, coming up next, there are going to be some new inductees if you're going to the new student athlete building, their new Hall of Fame that's going to be done relatively soon. Well, there's going to be a few names, or not a few, more than a few, being added to the annals of BYU history. We'll explain who they are next. And there's some heavy hitters in this class, and we'll get into that next as we round out this edition of Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks along the way. Plus, you even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. You want to bet on the Utah Jazz like some of you living in Utah probably are interested in, or if you have anything else beyond that, whether it's football, college hoops, they got all the options for you from our friends over at FanDuel. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, new customers can get $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All you got to do is play down that $5 bet. If it hits, $300 in your account to use like that. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up today and play your game with our friends over at FanDuel. They are the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you want the inside scoop on BYU sports, football, basketball, and everything else I've got for you guys, join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. A lot of you already know how valuable a resource it is. The best part is you don't have to sign up for a website, go to a message board. It comes to your phone in the form of a text message. Not much more intimate and direct than that. So if you want to sign up today, link is in the show notes below, or reach out to us via social media or email. We'll get you squared away. It's $5 a month to be a part of the group, and you get a 14-day free trial before you're charged a single penny. So what do you got to lose? Join us today, once again, the Locked On Cougars Insider Group, and get that inside intel that you crave about your beloved Cougars. All right. So before we go on today's show, I wanted to talk about BYU celebrating their 50th, count it 50th, Hall of Fame class. That's obviously a big round number that BYU is going to celebrate here, but they have a really strong Hall of Fame class being inducted this year that they announced earlier this week. In fact, I think it came out yesterday. So it's going to be inducted Friday, November 14th at the Marriott Center Annex. And it was established by the Cougar Club, speaking of the BYU Hall of Fame in 1975 as part of Brigham Young University's centennial commemoration. The Hall of Fame honors great athletes, coaches, administrators, and others who have brought honor and distinction to BYU. The inductees this year include former BYU women's volleyball great Alexa Gray, former BYU men's basketball all-time leading scorer Tyler Haws, Nichelle Stewart-Mackey, a star for women's track, Trevor Maddich, the ESPN personality and obviously national champion with the BYU football program. He is being inducted from the BYU football program. Sorry, apologies for screwing that up. We have Jack Morris, the Cy Young Award winner, the World Series champion from baseball, Mark Philbrick, who's just been an absolute legend in terms of BYU photography, and then Roger Reed, the former BYU men's basketball coach, make up this class. The 7 inductees will also be honored during a special presentation at halftime of BYU's game against TCU a week from Saturday out at Lavelle Edwards Stadium. Since the inaugural class went in 1975, nearly 250 individuals and 11 teams have been inducted into the BYU Athletic Hall of Fame. And the best part is, I think these 7 honorees are about as strong a class as you're going to find in any of those classes of the past 50 years. So congratulations are in order to Alexa, Tyler, Nichelle, Trevor, Jack, Mark, and Roger Reed. That's awesome to see them being inducted because they have stood out on their respective in their respective fields, whether it's a court in the case of many or field, whatever surface they've played on. Mark Philbrick's been on all of them, shooting photos for literally decades. I love stuff like this. And it connects both the past and the present of BYU athletics. And that's one of my favorite things, by the way, about BYU sports in general. I was on a college football addiction with TJ Pittenger. We recorded it last night. For those of you watching this on Thursday, I'm actually recording this on Wednesday night as well. But we had a conversation and he asked me the question, hey, do you think BYU fans are capable of flipping from their fandom of BYU football immediately to BYU basketball? Because as he mentioned, Florida State, with how things are going, he said that Seminoles fans are having a hard time making the transition from football, where they're struggling this season, to embracing basketball. And I said, one of my favorite things about BYU fans in general is they are fans of Brigham Young University athletics first and foremost. Yeah, there are pockets of BYU and Cougar Nation fans out there who love football, love basketball, or love whatever sport they love. That's their first love. But by and large, I'm telling you, the vast majority of you out there in Cougar Nation are fans of BYU and support the Cougars above all else. If you live out of state and you have a BYU team come to town, it's not uncommon to see a nice representation, for no matter what the sport is, of Cougar fans wearing a royal blue and cheering on BYU. It can be women's tennis. It can be swim and dive. It can be men's basketball. It can be football. Yeah, I know that men's basketball and football are going to draw the biggest crowds, but Cougar fans represent no matter what the opportunity and what the team is that's in their general area. And I'm telling you, both at home, speaking in Provo, and on the road. So that's what I appreciate about you out there as Cougar fans, is you embrace BYU for everything that it is. That's I don't think that's necessarily the case for a lot of athletic departments, a lot of universities. I think a lot of people latch on with an individual sport. I think by and large, for most of these top shelf universities, it's the football program. In some cases, they're basketball factories, but BYU kind of stands alone because I think just being a faith-based institution and just how unique culture that BYU has, it's cool to see the celebration for all these athletes. Because I'm not going to lie, I fully expect that Nichelle Stewart Mackey, being a women's track, is going to get just as big of a cheer, at least I hope so, as Trevor Matich is going to get, or Roger Reed will get. It's cool to see all this happen. And by the way, Roger Reed was a crazy scenario, an accident that happened. He's been the caretaker for his wife and then had an accident. I think it was like the end of last year and whatnot. So the fact that he's going to be honored here and inducted into the BYU Hall of Fame, that's cool to see. And I'm hoping that he gets roundly cheered. He was a really, really strong coach for a long stretch there, from the late 80s to the early to mid 90s. And I know things ended poorly for his tenure at BYU, but still, all of these athletes, I'm telling you, from Alexa Gray all the way to Trevor Matich and everywhere in between, Jack Morris, Mark Philbrick, this is a strong Hall of Fame class, and it's a great class to be the 50th to go into the BYU Athletic Hall of Fame. All right. I will step aside, and we will leave that there for today. Coming up on tomorrow's show, we're getting you ready. Showdown of epic proportions, and it's not out of line to say this is a historic game for BYU. They've never played a top 10 showdown in program history. They're going to do that Saturday morning. We will get you ready for it. My thoughts, my expectations. We'll also get to our weekly mailbag from our Locked On Cougars insider group. So busy Friday. It's been a busy week already, but as always, thank you, truthfully, for all y'all support. You guys are the absolute best out there in Cougar Nation. I said it before. I'll reiterate it again. What I do on this podcast, I feel like it's just a representation and an extension of what you, the fans out there, want and expect, and what you want to talk about when it comes to BYU and the Cougars. So, as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen today. Please subscribe, rate, and review. Like the show on YouTube right now if you have not done so already. If it's the very first time you've done it, appreciate it. If you do it every single day, doesn't matter. Thank you for all of your support. And until tomorrow, come back and be an everydayer right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.